Hello everyone. Today I am going to start chapter number 1, Object-Oriented Programming. The computer programming languages are divided into two categories, that are low-level languages and high-level languages. The low-level languages are machine-dependent languages and the high-level languages are machine-independent languages. And nowadays we are using the high-level languages. High-level languages further classified into two categories, that are procedure-oriented language and object-oriented language. And we have to study, in this chapter we have to study object-oriented languages. Before that, the procedure-oriented languages are depend upon the particular procedure. In that we have to follow a step-by-step sequence. For example, BASIC. And the second type of the languages are object-oriented languages. For example, Java, for example, C++, etc. We have to study in this chapter object-oriented programming language, because of according to the syllabus of ICSE, throughout the year we have to study the language Java, and Java is categorized as object-oriented language. In object-oriented programming, the very first thing you should know is object. What is object? And a Java object is a combination of two things, data and procedure. A single entity that having these two things are categorized as object. After that, the next thing is principle of object-oriented programming. An object-oriented programming having four principles. First, encapsulation. Second, inheritance. Third, is abstraction. And the last one is polymorphism. The first thing is encapsulation. Encapsulation means the wrapping up of data and function into a single unit. The unit is known as class, and wrapping up of data. Data means that is in the form of raw facts. And second thing, function. Function means the procedure that you suppose. For example, if in a program we want to do solve a mathematical problem, like some average of two numbers, average of four numbers. So in this, the two things are required. First is data. Data means the numbers that are required to solve this problem. And the second thing is the instruction, the function. So these two things, if we combine these two things or wrap these two things into a single unit, that is, the procedure is called encapsulation, and the in which we are wrapping these two things are known as class. The next is inheritance. Inheritance means when we are using some of the properties of one class into another class, that is called inheritance. Means it is very useful property, because next principle of the object-oriented programming is abstraction. Abstraction means essential representation without including the background details. If we represent a thing if we represent a particular thing without including the background detail, is considered as abstracted part. For example, if we represent a class, so class is known as abstracted part, because of in class we are having like the class 9. So in this class there are different type of object, each object having a individual entity, individual identity, but it's still having these all are having a same standard. That's why it is categorized in a single class. So the class, if we represent a class and we represent only the class 9th, so that class is abstraction. The representation means, in short of, the essential representation without background detail is known as abstraction. And the last point is polymorphism. Poly means multiple and morphism means purpose. If a particular thing used for the multiple purpose, that is called polymorphism. So polymorphism example, we can take an example, like if a particular function in Java, if we define a function in such a way that function perform the different type of tasks. Suppose a function we have defined with the name area, and that function is able to find the area of, so if we as input, if we provide the radius of the circle, so if the function is able to find the area of the circle, and if we provide as input length and breadth, then function is able to find the area of rectangle. If we give as input side of the square, then function is able to find the area of a square. So this function is known as this function area is known as polymorphism, because it can perform the different type of task. So these are the 4 principles of the object-oriented programming language.